Number 8. The USS Kitty Wake. Launched in 1945, the USS Kitty Wake was an American submarine rescue ship that served during World War II. The 251-foot-long vessel went on to enjoy a lengthy career participating in submarine maneuvers and sea trials in the Caribbean and Mediterranean seas, as well as the Atlantic and Indian Oceans. The Kitty Wake also participated in rescue and salvage missions. In addition to saving stranded soldiers and vehicles, it picked up 12 Cuban refugees who were found in a boat off Key West in 1963, attempting to flee their home country. After the Challenger space shuttle disaster in 1986, the ship and its crew found the missing black box at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean during a massive search undertaken by the Department of Defense and the U.S. Coast Guard. The Kitty Wake was decommissioned in 1994 after 49 years of service. It languished in Norfolk, Virginia for several years during negotiations to relocate it to Grand Cayman as a natural reef and scuba diving site. In 2011, after several years of delays, the decaying ship was sunk in the shallow waters off 7 Mile Beach in the Cayman Islands. It's one of the Caribbean's most famous wrecks to this day. However, what was once regarded as a simple popular tourist dive was altered after Hurricane Nate, which had downgraded to a tropical storm by the time it reached the area in the Cayman Islands where the Kitty Wake was anchored to the sea floor. The storm broke the sunken ship free from its anchor chains, pushed the wreck onto its side, and moved it 20 feet deeper than it had been before. The new location is also extremely close to a dangerous reef drop-off known as the Sand Chute. The site is now significantly more eerie and presents a greater risk to divers as well. Number 7. Camiguin Cemetery. Many, if not most people, would agree that graveyards are spooky enough on dry land, and that the idea of encountering one at the bottom of the sea is even scarier. During the 1870s, a volcano called Mount Vulcan erupted in the Philippine province of Camiguin, causing part of the island to sink below sea level and killing thousands of residents. Many were buried alive or drowned as the town of Catarman sank below the waves. The submerged burial ground sits off the coast of Cagayan de Oro. Originally called Punta Pasil or the Cape of Pasil, the site is better known today by its nickname as the Sunken Cemetery. It's marked by a single lonely cross that rises up out of the Bohol Sea. The underwater graves and other remnants of Catarman were still visible during low tide until 1948. That year, Mount Vulcan erupted again, sinking everything 20 feet deeper below the water's surface. Now, the burials remain underwater at all times, marked by crosses that once stood on dry land and now scatter the seafloor. The site functions as an artificial reef and has become a popular diving attraction despite its macabre origins. Number 6. The SS Cotopaxi. The SS Cotopaxi was a bulk carrier that was built after World War I as part of a US-based emergency shipbuilding program. It disappeared in 1925 after departing Charleston, South Carolina for Havana, Cuba. The ship took its 32-person crew with it to the bottom of the sea somewhere in the Bermuda Triangle after trying to radio for help during a brutal tropical storm. It was rediscovered during the 1980s but wasn't positively identified as the Cotopaxi until 2 years ago. Oddly, the wreck wasn't found in the Bermuda Triangle where it supposedly sank, but was instead spotted 40 miles off the coast of St. Augustine, Florida. Nicknamed the Bear Wreck by locals, the ship was identified through good old-fashioned historical research and by the process of elimination. The lengthy investigation uncovered some interesting details. It was found that the crew members' heartbroken families had sued over their disappearances. They convinced the Cotopaxi's carpenter to testify in the case, claiming that broken hatch covers that were used to cover coal could have caused the vessel to leak and sink during the storm. It also came to light that the crew's distress calls had been picked up in Jacksonville, not far from where the ship was found. The Cotopaxi's discovery and location challenges long-held theories that its disappearance had anything to do with the Bermuda Triangle. And while the region is shrouded in superstition, most scientists challenge any supernatural claims regarding events that have happened there or anywhere nearby. Number 5. A disturbing ancient grave. To anyone with claustrophobia, the thought of going cave diving is undoubtedly terrifying on its own. After all, it involves squeezing through long, narrow tunnels with no easy escape, and underwater no less. But some people find their passion with this dangerous pastime, which can lead to some equally scary yet fascinating discoveries. In 2016, cave divers Vicente Fito and Ivan Hernandez discovered some ancient human remains while exploring the Chan Hole Cave near Tulum, along Mexico's Caribbean coastline. They found the skeleton, which belonged to a horribly disfigured woman, while searching for another skeleton which was unfortunately taken by thieves. Only around 30% of the woman's bones were recovered, but they were nevertheless telling. An analysis revealed that the 5-foot 4-inch tall woman died nearly 10,000 years ago when she was around 30 years old. Her skull was injured in 3 places, and there are no signs that the wounds began healing before she perished, indicating that she may have been bludgeoned to death. At the same time, it's difficult to know whether the woman died from her wounds or if she initially survived, according to study leader Wolfgang Stinisbeck. Either way, he said she endured a very traumatic and unhappy end to her life. The woman's skull also had crater-like deformities, pointing toward a possible bacterial infection such as Treponema peritonitis, which is related to syphilis. If this is the case, then it represents the oldest known case of the disease in the Americas. The discovery is helping to shed light on who America's early inhabitants actually were. A study concluded that at the end of the last ice age, at least 2 distinct human populations lived in what is now Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula. The shape of the woman's skull and her cavity-riddled teeth indicate that she ate a high-sugar diet. This suggests that she belonged to a group that lived separately from the area's hunters and gatherers. Scholars are embroiled in a long-running debate over who arrived in the Americas first and when. Discoveries like this, as well as a 13,000-year-old skeleton that was recently found nearby, are helping to answer these questions and piece together a more accurate version of the historical narrative. Imagine coming across the remains of a potentially disfigured or murdered person from thousands of years ago while exploring underwater caves. How would you react? Tell us in the comments below. While you're there, make sure to like the video. Number 4. A missing nuclear weapon. While searching for sea cucumbers off the coast of British Columbia, Canada back in 2016, commercial diver Sean Smirashinsky came across a strange, flying saucer-like metal device. The bizarre object could be a lost nuclear weapon that disappeared after crashing in the area back in 1950, along with a US B-36 bomber. Shortly after the discovery, the Canadian Department of National Defense announced that it did not believe the object contained active nuclear material. Smirashinsky found the item off the coast of Pitt Island near the Alaskan border with Canada. He told the reporters that it was bigger than a king-sized bed and described it as having a round bottom and being perfectly flat on top with a bagel-shaped hole in the center. Due to the area's remoteness, it took Smirashinsky several days to reach a town where he could report his findings to locals and see if anyone knew what the object in question was. One elderly resident reportedly said, "Maybe you found that nuke they lost here in the 50s. The object seems to fit the profile for such a device, especially since it was relatively common for nuclear weapons to be lost during the Cold War, only to be rediscovered decades later. One of the main reasons that nuclear weapons can occasionally get lost and remain undetermined in origin for so long is due to the extreme secrecy surrounding nuclear weapons during the Cold War. Both the US and the then Soviet Union are anxious to keep any details surrounding their nuclear weapons arsenals and programs extremely classified, along with any information related to these programs. One reason, keeping design and capabilities top secret, but another, avoiding the fear and backlash of locals who could be in danger should a weapon be inadvertently set off. So could this be the lost nuke that has mystified military historians since the 1950 American B-36 Bomber 75 crash in the area? It seems fairly possible. Number 3. Bagged human remains. Some teens were exploring a remote Seattle beach in 2020 when they found a small black suitcase in the water. As they curiously approached it, they joked around about what might be inside. One of the kids commented that perhaps the bag was filled with money. That would have been nice, but it wasn't the case. A group member prodded the luggage open with a stick as her peers cheered her on. Suddenly, they were overwhelmed by an unbearable foul odor. Whatever was inside the suitcase, it was definitely dead. Suspecting they'd found human remains, the spooked youths called the police. Fire trucks and other emergency vehicles rushed to the scene. Authorities confirmed that the luggage contained dismembered body parts. They searched the area and found several other bags filled with human remains. Few things could be more terrifying. The deceased individuals in question turned out to be 35-year-old Jessica Lewis and 27-year-old Austin Wenner. They had died about a month earlier from multiple gunshot wounds. Their landlord, Michael Lee Dudley, was charged with their murders. Lewis and Wenner were renting a room from Dudley when they began struggling to afford the rent. He ordered the pair to leave, and a big blowout ensued between the two parties. Neighbors later said that they overheard a male pleading, saying, "Please don't do this. Please, just let me leave." Then they heard gunshots. Police reported to the scene that night, but Dudley didn't answer the door, so they simply left. Sadly, by then it was probably too late to save the couple's lives. Detectives think that Dudley had help carrying out the gruesome crime. Local news reported, based on the court documents, that the cuts on the victims' bodies were disorganized and appeared to be made with different tools. Number 2. Ultrablack fish. The pitch-black deep sea is by nature a mysterious place full of the unknown. Some of the world's darkest creatures can be found lurking in the equally dark waters near the sea floor. It is here that they camouflage themselves against predators amid the complete absence of sunlight, simply by blending in with the blackness that surrounds them. The so-called ultrablack fish has evolved to absorb 99.5% of the light that hits them, making them around 20 times darker than everyday objects that are black, according to new reports. A recent study analyzed 16 ultra-black fish species including the fangtooth, the Pacific black dragon, the anglerfish, and the black swallower. These fish, which are found in Monterey Bay and the Gulf of Mexico, appear to have adopted their darkened pigmentation independently of one another. So what does this mean? In the words of study author Alexander Davis, the ultra-black quality appeared on its own more than once throughout the fish family tree. Some species live as much as 3 miles beneath the ocean's surface, where the light that exists is produced by bioluminescent organisms. That deep down, there's nowhere to take cover from predators. A creature's extremely dark pigment enables it to hide in plain sight and avoid being eaten. Tiny packets of pigment in skin cells, known as melanosomes, are arranged differently in ultra-black fish than they are in other species. When it comes to ultra-black fish, melanosomes are geometrically shaped in a way that's optimal for absorbing light. Their skin is some of the darkest material ever discovered. Researchers believe that the discovery could be useful for developing light-trapping materials for things like solar panels and telescopes. Number 1. Cremated coral reef. Located off the Miami coast, the Neptune Memorial Reef is inviting at first glance. In fact, it looks like nothing more than an entrance to an underwater city complete with roads, gates, ruins, benches, and statues. It's the world's largest underwater city and artificial coral reef, and it's rather quaint until you realize that it's made from a mixture of cremated human remains and cement. The unique columbarium can be found roughly 3¼ miles off Key Biscayne, where it sits 40 feet beneath the waves. Officially opened in 2007, the underwater necropolis was the idea of the Neptune Society, a Florida crematorium. Eerie, silent, and beautiful, the unusual artificial reef was designed by Florida artist Kim Brandel. The underwater cemetery is made up of 16 acres of cremated remains cast into concrete memorials, statues, bronze and steel accents, crumbling ruins, and gates. Depending on your viewpoint, this open to the public final resting place is either fascinating or incredibly creepy. Would you ever be interested in diving underwater to tour the Miami Underground Cemetery, the labyrinth of caves off of Tulum where divers found a skeleton, or the wreckage of the Kitty Wake? Are you a fan of scuba and snorkeling in these kinds of creepy environments? Tell us your scariest underwater experience in the comments below. Thanks for watching today's video, and make sure you like and subscribe so you never miss an update. Until next time, happy underwater exploring.